The room shook with the sound of alarms. Red lights flashed across the walls. Smoke curled from broken wires. Inside the holding chamber stood a human officer. Tall and calm, before him the alien warrior growled, her eyes burning with rage. Her name was Zyra, a fighter from a proud warrior race. She had lost many soldiers in the battle, and now the human stood before her as if mocking her loss. Her claws flexed sharp enough to tear through steel. Her chest rose and fell with anger. The human officer's uniform was already torn. Scars marked his skin, but his eyes never looked away. There was no fear in him, no sign of weakness. This made her even more furious. Why would a fragile human not tremble before her? With a roar, Zyra lunged forward. Her claws ripped through his uniform like paper. The sound echoed in the chamber. Fabric shredded, falling to the floor in pieces. Her soldiers watching from behind bars cheered in approval. But the officer still stood. He did not flinch, he did not scream. His calm expression stayed the same, as if her attack meant nothing. The silence that followed felt heavier than the alarms. Zyra froze for a moment, her claws inches from his chest. Her people had called humans weak prey. They said humans were easy to crush. But now, standing before this officer, she felt something strange. He looked straight into her eyes. There was no hatred, only a cold patience. His steady breathing filled the silence. The flickering red light reflected in his gaze. It was as if he was waiting for her to see something. She pushed again, claws pressing against his skin. Yet the officer only tilted his head slightly. Almost like a teacher watching a child lose control. Zyra's rage grew hotter. She slashed again, tearing deeper into his clothing. Threads scattered across the floor. Her claws struck metal underneath the skin. Not armor, not a weapon he carried, but something fused inside him. Something glowing faintly under his flesh. Her eyes widened, but she tried to hide it. She could not let her soldiers see hesitation. She wanted to finish him. She wanted to tear him apart, but her claws hesitated, shaking against his body. Why was he not fighting back? Why did he stand so still? Her people had trained her to smell fear, to sense the weakness in prey, but this man smelled of something else. Calm, steady, unbroken. The officer's lips finally moved. His voice was low but carried through the chamber. "You think rage will break me," he said, "but you have no idea what waits beneath." The words struck her like a blade. Not because of the meaning, but because of how steady he sounded. Even while staring death in the eyes, even while her claws threatened to pierce his heart. For a heartbeat, she felt her own chest tighten. She thought she saw movement under his skin, like shadows shifting, like light crawling. She blinked, unsure if it was real. But the officer did not look away. Her claws pressed harder. Sparks jumped as they scraped the strange metal. Her soldiers stopped cheering. They leaned closer, silent now. They too saw the faint glow pulsing under his chest. Zyra's heart pounded. Her rage was still there, but now tangled with fear. What was he? What had humans been hiding? Why did his body not break? The officer took a slow breath. Smoke drifted across his face behind him. The walls cracked from the earlier fight, yet he looked like the storm had not touched him. He stood like a wall, unshaken. Her claws trembled again. Her arm refused to strike. She wanted to scream, but her voice caught in her throat. The calm in his eyes made her feel smaller with every second. The alarms screamed. The chamber lights flickered. The air smelled of smoke and blood, but all she could see was him. The human who should have been broken, but wasn't. Her rage had shredded his uniform. Her fury had torn through steel. But now terror froze her in place because deep inside she knew this was not the weakness her people had promised. This was something else, something far more dangerous, something her people had never warned her about. And as the officer stood still, she realized the truth was only beginning to show. The chamber shook with the weight of silence. Zyra's claws hovered against the strange lines under the human officer's skin. The glow beneath his chest pulsed like a hidden heartbeat. Her rage still burned, but now fear whispered at the edge of her mind. She wanted to finish him. She wanted to rip him apart. But something inside her stopped her hand. It was not weakness, not mercy. It was the unknown that held her still. The human officer stood like a stone wall, his breathing calm, his eyes steady. Even as alarms screamed and smoke filled the air, he showed no sign of pain, only patience, like a predator waiting for its prey to make a mistake. Zyra snarled, shaking off her hesitation. Her people would never forgive weakness. Her soldiers were watching. Their eyes sharp. If she stepped back now, she would be marked as a coward. Her claws dug deeper. sparks flying against the glowing surface of his body. The officer did not move. He let her strike again. Every slash shredded more of his uniform, yet the strange metallic glow spread wider with each cut. It was as if the human skin itself was woven with secrets. Zyra roared, her rage filling the chamber. She struck again and again. The walls trembled. Dust fell from the ceiling. Her soldiers cheered once more. But their cheers were thinner now, mixed with confusion. Every strike revealed more of the truth. The human's body was not only flesh, it was fused with something else. Something ancient, something powerful. A bond of flesh and metal. Finally, the officer moved. Not to fight, not to kill, but to step forward slowly. Zyra's claws scraped across his chest as he walked into her attack. The sound of metal grinding filled the chamber. She gasped, stepping back without meaning to. Her claws were sharp enough to pierce armor, but against him they felt dull. It was like striking a mountain with a blade of glass. The officer's voice cut through the chaos. "You misunderstand," he said calmly. "You think this is weakness? But weakness is something you no longer see in us." The words chilled her more than any weapon. He was not boasting. He was not mocking. He was speaking like someone who had already accepted the truth. Her soldiers muttered among themselves. Their eyes darted between Zyra and the glowing human. Fear crept into their voices. She could feel it spreading through the room, and that fear fed her anger. "No," she growled. "Your flesh, you bleed, you break," she slashed again, her claws carving across his chest. Blood appeared this time, red against the glow. Her soldiers shouted in triumph, but the wound closed before their eyes. The blood slowed, the skin sealed. The glow beneath burned brighter. It was as if the man's body refused to die, as if death itself could not claim him. Zyra staggered back, her heart pounding. Her rage still burned, but it was no longer pure. It was tangled with doubt. Her people had promised humans were fragile. But here was proof they had been lied to. The officer took another step forward. His shadow stretched across her. The glow in his chest reflected in her eyes. She tried to raise her claws again, but her arms shook, refusing to obey. "You fight with rage," he said, "but rage blinds you." His words were quiet, but they cut deeper than her claws. "You think resistance is strength, but true strength is control." Her breath came fast. Her claws dripped with her own blood where she had pressed too hard. Her body trembled, though she would not admit it. For the first time in her life, she felt trapped not by chains but by fear. The soldiers behind her had fallen silent again. They saw what she saw, a human who should have been dead, but stood stronger than ever, a secret that shattered everything they had been taught, and a truth that could break empires. Zyra roared again, forcing her fear into fury. She struck once more. Her claws rained down like storms. Sparks burst, dust flew, the floor cracked beneath them, but the officer remained unbroken. Her last strike stopped an inch from his throat. Her arm locked, frozen. Her eyes met his again, and for the first time she realized she was not fighting prey. The officer leaned closer, his voice low. "You wanted to see the truth," he whispered. "Now it is too late to turn away." The glow spread across his body like fire, and Zyra felt her own rage collapse into silence. The chamber was heavy with silence, the alarms still screamed. The lights still flickered, but no one moved. Not the soldiers behind the bars. Not the alien warrior standing frozen. Not even the human officer whose chest glowed with unnatural light. Zyra's claws hovered above his skin. Her arm locked, her breath sharp. She had torn through armor, through flesh, through steel in her life, but never had her claws refused her command. Never had her own body betrayed her with hesitation. Her eyes narrowed, staring at the glow under his skin. It pulsed with steady rhythm like a second heart. The wound she had opened had already sealed. The blood she had drawn had vanished, and the skin beneath her claws looked stronger than before. Whispers spread among her soldiers. They had been trained to believe humans were weak, that humans were only flesh, soft and fragile. But what they saw now was something else, something their leaders had never told them. One soldier hissed, "He heals too fast." Another muttered, "This is not natural." Their voices grew louder, but Zyra shut them out. She could not show fear before them. Fear would spread like fire through dry grass, but inside her chest her heart pounded. She could feel the truth pressing against her mind. Something was wrong with this human, something her people had never prepared her for, and that unknown was more dangerous than any blade. The officer tilted his head. His eyes glowed faintly now, reflecting the light inside him. "You see it, don't you?" he said, his voice calm, heavy with certainty. "You thought you were hunting prey, but prey does not look back at you this way," Zira growled, forcing her claws to dig deeper. She needed to break him. She needed to prove her people right. Her pride demanded victory. Her rage demanded blood. Her claws struck again, faster, harder. The chamber shook with each blow. Sparks flew from the metal beneath his flesh. The floor cracked where she slammed him against the wall. The sound was deafening, yet the officer did not fall. Each strike left marks, but they closed too quickly. Each wound glowed brighter instead of weaker. His body absorbed her rage, and with every attack, her own strength faltered. Her soldiers no longer cheered. Their voices were hushed, their eyes wide. They pressed closer to the bars, watching the impossible unfold, watching their fiercest warrior fail to break one human. Zira's breath grew ragged, sweat dripped down her face. Her claws ached, her arms trembled. She had given everything to this fight, and still the officer stood calm. He raised his hand slowly, not to strike, not to defend, but to touch her wrist. The gesture was simple, almost gentle, yet it froze her blood. His fingers wrapped around her arm with unshakable grip. Not crushing, not violent, but immovable, like iron forged in fire. She tried to pull back. Her strength failed her. The officer leaned closer, his voice a whisper only she could hear. "You are afraid?" "Aren't you?" he said, her eyes widened, rage flaring to hide her fear. "I am not afraid of prey," she spat, but the words tasted like lies. She could feel her soldiers watching. She could feel her own body betray her. The tremble in her claws, the shaking in her breath, the terror blooming inside her chest. The officer released her wrist. He stepped back, still calm, but his eyes locked onto hers. Unblinking, steady, piercing through her rage. "You should be," he said. The words echoed in her skull. Like thunder rolling through the chamber, her knees weakened, but she stood firm. Her pride screamed against the truth, yet deep inside, cracks had formed. She saw movement again beneath his skin. Light crawling across his chest, metal shining through flesh. Something alive but not alive. Something her people could never understand. Her claws lowered without her command. Her shoulders trembled, though she fought to hide it. Her rage had been her weapon, but now it felt like chains. Chains that broke against his calm strength. The soldiers behind her whispered louder. They were afraid too. The sight before them was not a victory. It was a warning written in blood and fire. Zira's eyes darted around, searching for answers. But all she saw was the officer. Still standing, still calm, still waiting. His silence louder than any battle cry. She wanted to roar. She wanted to strike again. But her body would not obey. Her spirit cracked with doubt. And in that crack, fear grew. The fracture of fear was small at first. A whisper in the dark, but it spread quickly. It ate through her rage, it clawed at her pride. And when her eyes met his once more, she finally understood. This man was no prey. This man was no victim. This man was the beginning of something greater. The chamber shook with another alarm. But Zira heard nothing. Her world had narrowed to him, the glowing human who refused to fall. And the terror of knowing the truth was only just beginning. The chamber was thick with smoke. The alarms wailed like dying creatures. Yet all eyes stayed fixed on one man. The human officer stood with his chest glowing faintly. Shreds of his uniform hung from his shoulders like broken flags. Zira's claws dripped with her own blood where she had pressed too hard. Her breathing was sharp and heavy. She had fought battles across worlds. She had slain beasts larger than ships, but nothing had prepared her for this. The human's wound healed again before her eyes, skin knitting itself back together, the glow pulsing brighter each time. It was not a trick, not armor, not a shield. It was something inside him, something alive. Her soldiers whispered in fear. They pressed against the bars of the chamber. Their once proud voices cracked with doubt. This was not the weak prey they had been promised. This was something far more dangerous. The officer raised his hand slowly, his movements calm, precise, controlled. The glow spread from his chest down his arm. Lines of light traced his skin like veins of fire. The chamber filled with an eerie silence. "You wanted the truth," he said, his voice steady, unshaken by battle. "Now you will see it." The words carried through the smoke like iron. Each syllable pressed into her chest like weight. Zira took a step back without meaning to. Her claws shook, her pride burned. She wanted to strike again, but her body refused. Her mind was frozen between rage and terror. The officer's eyes glowed faintly. Blue light flickered across his face. His chest burned brighter, until the torn uniform fell completely away, revealing the secret hidden beneath. It was not flesh alone. It was not machine alone. It was a fusion. Metal woven through muscle, light woven through blood. His body bore the marks of ancient design. Not scars, but symbols etched beneath his skin. Lines of energy crawled across his chest and shoulders, pulsing with the rhythm of his heart. Alive yet not alive, human yet not human, Syra gasped. Unable to stop herself, the sight burned into her eyes. Her soldiers fell into silence, not one dared to speak. They were staring at something beyond their understanding. The officer's voice rose again. "We warned your leaders," he said. "We told them not to push us." His words carried no anger, only certainty like stone carved in time. Her claws lowered against her will. For the first time, she could not imagine victory. Every instinct screamed at her to flee, but her pride chained her in place. Her people's honor demanded she stand. The glow grew brighter still. The chamber lights flickered and died. Only the blue fire of his body remained, casting long shadows across the walls, painting every soldier's face with terror. Syra's knees weakened, her heart thundered in her chest. She whispered to herself, "What are you?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. The officer stepped closer. His footsteps echoed like drumbeats. He loomed taller now, not because he had grown, but because fear had made her smaller. "I am human," he said. Nothing more, nothing less. Yet the way he spoke those words carried weight, as if humanity itself stood behind him, as if all their hidden strength poured into this one moment. Her soldiers trembled. Some looked away, unable to watch. Others pressed their foreheads to the bars in silent horror. The truth was breaking them. The truth was breaking her. She tried to laugh, tried to deny it. But no sound came out. Her voice had abandoned her. Her rage had abandoned her, only fear remained. The officer stopped only a breath away. His chest glowed like a burning sun. His eyes locked with hers. "You thought us weak," he said. "But weakness is not what survives the void." His words cut through her like blades. Memories of her people's arrogance flashed in her mind. How they had mocked humans. How they had called them fragile. How they had believed conquest would be easy. Now she saw the cost of that lie. She saw the truth written in light and steel. Humans were not prey, they were not fragile. They were something else. The chamber walls shook. The alarms died one by one. The smoke cleared, leaving only silence. The secret was awake now, and there was no turning back. Syra's claws fell to her side. Her breath came in sharp gasps. Her rage was gone, her pride was broken. And terror wrapped itself around her heart because she finally understood. This man was not the only one, this secret was not his alone. If one human could stand like this, what would happen when they all awakened? The chamber had fallen quiet. The alarms had faded, the smoke had thinned. Only the steady glow from the human officer's body lit the space. Syra stood frozen, her claws lowered, her rage shattered. The truth pressed against her chest like a mountain. Humans were not what her people had believed for years. They had told each other stories of fragile prey, of weak bodies and soft flesh, of a species barely worthy of standing among the stars. But here stood proof that those stories were lies. The officer's skin gleamed with faint metallic veins. His chest pulsed with hidden fire. Every wound she gave him had healed too fast. Every strike had only revealed more strength. It was no trick, no illusion. Her soldiers trembled in the shadows. They had fought beside her in countless battles. They had believed her strength would crush this human. But now their eyes held only fear, fear of what they had seen, fear of what it meant. The officer looked at them, then back at her. "You were told we are fragile," he said. "You were told we are prey." His voice echoed through the chamber, steady and calm. "But prey does not rise like this." Syra clenched her fists. Her claws biting her palms, she wanted to deny him. She wanted to scream that he was lying. But her body betrayed her with silence. Her heart betrayed her with fear. She remembered her people's leaders, the councils that spoke with certainty, the generals who promised humans would fall easily. The laughter when they described human weakness, now all that laughter felt like poison. The officer took a slow step forward, his eyes locked on hers, unblinking. "You never asked why we survive," he said. "You never asked why we fight harder than you expect." His glow brightened, filling the chamber with blue fire. Syra's soldiers flinched at the sight. Some covered their eyes. Others whispered prayers to gods who would not hear them. Even Zira felt her knees weaken, her pride the only thing keeping her upright. The human raised his hand, not to strike, but to show her the lines of light under his skin. "These are not weapons," he said. "They are reminders." His voice carried weight like stone dropped into still water. "Reminders of what we have endured," he continued. "Reminders of the wars we survived. Reminders of the pain we turned into strength." His eyes glowed brighter. "And reminders that we are not as weak as you believe." Zira's breath caught in her throat. The truth unfolded before her eyes. This was not some experiment, not some single soldier enhanced for war. This was something deeper, something older. Her claws shook at her sides. She could not stop the thought racing through her mind. If one human stood like this, how many more carried this secret? How many more were waiting to be revealed? Her soldiers whispered the same question. "What if they are all like him?" one said. "No army can fight that," another muttered. Their voices carried fear instead of courage. The sound of defeat before a battle even began. The officer's gaze swept across them. He did not smile. He did not mock. He only spoke the truth. "You came to break us," he said. "But you cannot break what is already forged in fire." Zira's chest tightened. She thought of the countless victories her people had claimed, the wars they had fought, the enemies they had crushed, but never had she seen one man stand against so much, and never had she felt this powerless. The human's glow dimmed slightly, not fading, but calming. Like a storm settling into silence, his voice dropped lower. "You will carry this truth back to your people," he said. Her throat tightened. She wanted to refuse. She wanted to fight until her claws broke, but deep inside she knew she could not. The truth was stronger than her rage. Her soldiers waited for her command. But none came. Their eyes turned to her. Desperate for strength, yet she had none to give. She was no longer their symbol of victory. The officer stepped closer still. The glow reflected in her eyes. "You saw me bleed," he said. "You saw me heal. You saw the truth that your leaders fear." Zira shivered. Her claws lowered completely. She could not look away from him. The man who was no longer only a man. The human who carried the weight of his entire species. "You will remember this moment," he said. "You will remember that humanity is not prey." His voice thundered in her ears. "And when the time comes, you will know what it means." The chamber fell into silence once again. Zira's heart raced, her pride burned in shame. Her fear grew heavier with every breath. Because she finally understood the truth, humans were not weak. Humans were preparing, humans were changing. Humans were becoming something else, and she, a warrior of her people, had been the first to see it. The chamber was silent. The soldiers who once shouted with pride now stood still, their eyes wide, their voices gone. They had seen something they could not understand, and it filled them with fear. Zira's claws hung useless by her side. Her body trembled, though she tried to hide it. She had always been the fiercest among them, a warrior who never bowed, never broke. But now her spirit cracked under the weight of truth. The human officer stood calm before her, his body glowing faintly in the dark. He had bled, yet he had healed. He had been struck, yet he had not fallen. Every part of him spoke of something beyond flesh. Zira could not move her eyes from him. The glow inside his chest pulsed like fire in the night. It was not the light itself that shook her. It was what it meant. It was the truth she could no longer deny. Humans were not fragile, they were not prey. They were something different, something her people had never prepared her to face. And that truth filled her heart with terror. The officer took a step closer. His footsteps echoed against the chamber walls. Each step made her feel smaller. Each step stripped away her pride. Until she felt like nothing before him. "You wanted to see strength," he said. "Now you know what it looks like." His voice was calm, without anger, but calmness was worse than fury. Calmness meant control. Zira's throat tightened. She wanted to roar. She wanted to strike, but her body would not obey. Her heart beat too fast. Her claws shook. Her soldiers whispered in the shadows. "Is he even human?" one asked. "He heals like a machine," another whispered. "No, worse," another muttered. "He heals like something that cannot die." The words spread through the chamber. Fear climbed into every voice. It filled the air thicker than smoke, and Zira knew they were all feeling what she felt. The terror of realizing they had been wrong. The officer's eyes glowed faintly now. Not with rage, not with madness, but with certainty. He looked at her as if he had already won, as if victory was never in question. Zira stepped back without thinking. Her claws scraped the floor. She wanted distance, but the walls trapped her. Her pride trapped her, her heart screamed, her mind raced. She had fought beasts with fangs, soldiers with blades, warships with fire, but none of them had ever made her feel this powerless. None had ever made her question her very beliefs. The officer tilted his head. "You feel it now, don't you?" he said. "The fear." His voice was soft, but it cut like steel. "You know your strength means nothing here." Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, but even lies refused to leave her mouth. Her silence betrayed her. Her silence admitted the truth. The soldiers behind her shuffled nervously. They were warriors too, but none of them stepped forward. None dared to challenge the human, even united. They no longer believed they could win. Zira's eyes burned. Not with rage this time, but with shame. She was their leader, their champion. And yet she stood trembling before one man. The officer's glow dimmed slightly, enough to make his words clear. "You thought us weak," he said. "You thought us prey. But prey does not make predators tremble." His words echoed through her chest. She felt them cut deeper than her own claws ever could. She felt the weight of his truth press down. Her knees bent slightly under the pressure, and she knew her soldiers saw it. The shame was unbearable, but the fear was worse, because now she realized what this meant. If humans were not weak, if humans were more than flesh, then every battle her people had planned was already lost. Every war they dreamed of winning was already broken, and the galaxy itself would soon learn the same truth, that humans were not prey. They were nightmares in waiting. Zira's vision blurred for a moment. Her chest rose and fell too fast. She forced herself to steady, but it was too late. Her fear was already written across her face. The officer saw it, her soldiers saw it, and worst of all, she felt it. The fear had spread too deep. It would never leave her again. The chamber seemed colder now. The glow from his chest lit the shadows. Her claws no longer felt sharp. Her body no longer felt strong. She was no longer a warrior, she was a witness. A witness to the truth her people feared, and though she hated it, she knew this truth would follow her forever. It would haunt every breath, every thought, every dream, because in his calm eyes she had seen it. Not just strength, not just survival, but a promise. A promise that humans would rise, and that nothing would stop them. Her rage had shattered. Her pride had crumbled, only terror remained. Terror that did not belong to her alone, but to her entire people. The chamber still glowed with the faint light of the officer's body. The soldiers held their breath, their claws pressed against the bars. None dared to speak, none dared to move. They had seen fear grip their leader, and that fear now belonged to all of them. Zira's chest rose and fell too quickly. Her claws hung at her sides, trembling. She had fought with everything she had, yet she stood broken. Her pride crushed beneath a truth too heavy to carry. The officer looked at her calmly, no rage in his eyes. No cruelty in his face, only certainty. The glow in his chest dimmed slightly, enough for the shadows to return to the chamber. He could have ended her. His hand could have reached her throat. His strength could have torn through her heart. Her life was in his grasp. But instead he stepped back. The silence grew heavier. Her soldiers whispered in confusion. "Why does he not kill her?" one asked. "Why leave her alive?" another muttered. They could not understand. Zira's eyes widened as she realized too. She expected death, she had braced for it, but instead, he gave her something worse. He gave her mercy. His voice carried through the chamber. "We do not kill for pride," he said. "We do not destroy to prove strength." His eyes locked on hers. "We endure, we resist, and we rise." The words cut deeper than any blade. She wanted death to free her from shame, but he denied her even that. He let her live, so the truth would burn inside her forever. Her claws curled into fists. She hated the weakness she felt. She hated the trembling in her arms, but above all, she hated the calmness in his voice, because it was not the calm of victory. It was the calm of control. The officer turned his gaze to the soldiers behind her. They shrank under his eyes, predators reduced to prey in an instant. "You will carry this moment," he said. "You will remember it long after this war ends." The soldiers pressed their foreheads to the bars. They could not meet his gaze. Their pride had shattered, the same way Zira's had, and still, he did not strike them down. Mercy spread fear faster than death. Zira knew it. Her soldiers knew it. They had seen their leader broken, and the man who broke her had chosen to spare them. Her throat tightened. You. Why? She forced out. The words scraped against her pride, but she needed to ask. She needed to know why he had not ended her. The officer's eyes softened slightly. Not with pity, but with weight. Because killing you changes nothing, he said. But letting you live changes everything. The glow in his chest flared with his words. Her knees nearly buckled, she understood at last. This was not about her life. It was about the truth she would carry. The truth that would poison her people's arrogance. Her soldiers looked to her, waiting for orders, waiting for strength, but she could give them none. Her claws twitched, but her voice failed. She had no command left to give. The officer stepped back fully. His glow faded into a quiet hum beneath his skin. The chamber seemed darker without it, but the memory of it burned brighter than light. It was carved into their minds forever. You came to conquer us, he said, but you found something you cannot break. His words were heavy, each one falling like stone on her shoulders, each one carving itself into her memory. Sierra swallowed hard, her throat dry, her pride bleeding. Her rage had once been her weapon, but now it was gone, replaced with something colder, heavier, fear, respect, and the knowledge that humans were not what they seemed. The soldiers behind her shifted uneasily. They no longer looked to her for courage. They looked at the officer instead. Their silence admitted it. They no longer believed they could win. The officer gave them one last look. Not as prey, not as enemy, but as witness. You came to see weakness, he said, but what you saw was truth. He turned away slowly, leaving her standing broken, her claws limp, her pride shattered. The silence crushed her more than any blow. Because mercy was heavier than death, her soldiers whispered her name. But she did not answer. Her eyes stayed on the human, the man who had spared her, the man who had left her with the weight of truth. And in that moment she knew, the turning point had already come. The war would never be the same. Her people would never be the same. And she, their warrior, would never forget.